Hey, Mr. Chairman. As you're well aware, this budget does none of the things, virtually none of the things that Democrats are accusing you of doing in the markup. We're not slashing. There aren't draconian cuts. We're not giving things away to the ultra-wealthy. What we're hearing is the same old tax and spend rhetoric, the scare tactics that our colleagues on the other side have used for decades now to mortgage our children's future. What this budget is all about is starting to clean up, take the first steps in cleaning up the enormous messes left behind by the Biden administration and his allies, Democrat allies here in Congress. I want to talk about two of them. We're $36.4 trillion in debt. No family, if they were faced with a serious illness and had to borrow $50,000 to pay for medical bills, if that family member got well, would keep borrowing $50,000 and keep spending at that level. That is an insane approach. Nobody would do that. But that's exactly what the federal government has done. Let me take a look at the first chart. In 2019, the fiscal year before the pandemic, the federal government spent $4.4 trillion. Year of the pandemic, we had to do something fast and massive so markets wouldn't collapse. So we went on a massive spending spree, spent almost $6.6 trillion, 6.5. Now, again, when the pandemic wound down, you would think we would return to some reasonable baseline spending level. We didn't do that. For the next 5 years, we averaged $6.5 trillion. Last year, we spent $6.9. The Wall Street Journal just reported the first 4 months, we spent $2.43 trillion. Multiplied times 3, that's $7.3 trillion. 61% ahead above $4.4 trillion. Our population grew at 2.6. This is completely unjustified. No family, no business would do this. That's what the federal government has done. So the question is, how do we return to a reasonable pre-pandemic spending level? Now, I know Republicans do, maybe even Democrats too, talk about zero-based budgeting. Now, unfortunately, I don't think we'll ever return to that, but here's the next best thing. Over the Christmas break, I went back to look at other budgets that we could use as a baseline. Don't accept them all, but use them as a reasonable baseline. So I looked back in 1998, where we actually had a surplus of $69 billion under Bill Clinton. Now, if you take that $1.7 trillion of total outlays from 1998, increase it to account for population growth and inflation, use today's Social Security, Medicare, and interest payments. So you exempt those programs, but inflate Bill Clinton's total outlays, you'd end up spending $5.5 trillion this year. Now, what's interesting about that is President Biden is projecting $5.5 trillion of revenue. Using Bill Clinton's budget from 1998, his total outlays. By the way, that was supported by Senators Grassley, McConnell, Murray, Wyden, Durbin, Collins, Schumer, Graham, Thune, Wicker, Moran back in 1998. Very bipartisan budget. We'd have a balanced budget. Now, if that's too reasonable for you, I took a look at President Obama's 2014 budget. Again, used this year's Social Security, Medicare, and interest, but grew those total outlays by population growth and inflation. You'd end up with $6.2 trillion and about a $700 billion deficit. Again, too reasonable for you? Not reasonable enough? Go to 2019 actual spending. Grow that by population and inflation, you'd be at $6.5 trillion. No matter how you cut it, the worst case scenario, using those very reasonable baselines, you'd save $800 billion by basically spending what we did only 5 years ago. There's nothing draconian about that. It's called reasonable. Now, what Chairman Graham has done, he's taken a fourth option. I took a look at what President Trump budgeted in his last year in office for 2025. That was $5.5 trillion. That also would balance the budget, but that wouldn't account for Social Security and Medicare at today's level. So if you put those figures in there, you're $6.61 trillion. That's the chairman's mark. Now, again, nobody's suggesting you use every line item in President Trump's budget. It's a top-line figure. Personally, I'd go back to the Clinton budget. Take a look at that. You have about $500 billion to plus up things like defense, veterans benefits. Again, there's all kinds of reasonable ways to approach this. We're just not approaching it reasonably. So again, we've got a pathway, a very reasonable way. We've got 4 different options here of how to return to a pre-pandemic level to clean up that mess, this massive amount of deficit spending and debt. But here's where we're really here today. Final chart. To clean up this mess. The open borders that President Biden used his presidential authority. You know, we kept hearing lies that we needed a bill. No, we didn't need a bill. President Trump used the presidential authority he had after his border crisis caused by DACA to secure the border before he left office. President Biden used that exact same presidential authority, open it wide up, create a clear and present danger that now we're having to clean up that mess. And by the way, just to prove they had the presidential authority to close it back down, when it became a political liability in 2024, he started using that authority and he started closing the border. What President Trump is doing, he's closing it. But he needs help. He needs another $175 billion, and that is the main purpose of this markup. We're not slashing. We're not giving away, tons of dollars to the wealthy. We're trying to clean up the mess of an open border that threatens every American. That's what we're trying to do here, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your dedication to also coming up with a reasonable spending level, pre-pandemic spending level, in our next round of this. So thank you much.